worked on some major rebranding projects, like the rebranding project of Burger King, the rebranding of Bud Light, launch of Bud Light Seltzer, Jetpuffed, Oreo. So a lot of CPG beverage heavy work.
Hey Charmie, welcome to the podcast. How are you doing?
Doing good. Thank you so much for having me, Rahul.
No, it's my pleasure, and I'm excited to have another brand designer on the podcast. And it'll be really fun to know your story. So before we go ahead, do you want to give an introduction to the audience?
Yeah, absolutely. I've been an art director and designer for over 10 years now. And I love playing around the area of branding. So I do a lot of work in design, motion, and strategy. And everything kind of is under the branding umbrella because that's the area that I love playing around, and I love visual storytelling. So using skill sets in like branding and motion and typography, all of that just helps me like storytell and build brands from the ground up, even if I need to, or build like stronger brands that have a lot of equity already, that have a lot of like meaning and purpose and exist in the world. But then how do you reframe some of their branding, or how do you launch a new product or expand how a brand needs to expand in the world? So yeah, that's just what I do.
Thank you for that. I think we'll get into more detail what you do after we know the question. With the question we are here to ask, how did you become a designer?
Yeah. That's a really interesting and a long uh, answer actually, because I feel like
We
most
have
of
time. We have time.
no, of course, and I've noticed similarities between other designers also around my time or a few years ahead that have similar-ish stories. But I'll just tell you about me. So I've always been a really creative child, and I loved playing around on Microsoft PowerPoint when I was a kid. Just not knowing that I was even designing or like using the digital medium to play around with typography or animating using like slide Microsoft PowerPoint, and I would just like take graphics and create some stuff. And in school, I was not as academically excelling academically as my sister was or people around me, because I was an extremely visual child and I wanted to play around with a lot of visual mediums. I was obviously good at like arts and crafts. I was super athletic, but like going to the computer lab and playing around with my Microsoft PowerPoint is actually a core memory that I have since I was a child. And
Yeah, PowerPoint is love. I mean, if
uh,
anyone gives me a choice, like you have to use one design tool for your life, I'll choose PowerPoint.
oh my gosh, I wouldn't choose that anymore. But now I think it would
I still
frustrate
would.
me
It's
personally
just
because I
amazing.
feel like Adobe has just like so many amazing tools which just makes things easier. And I don't use PowerPoint anymore. But when I was a child, that was the one that I had access to. I can see you disagree.
I mean, hey, let's agree, disagree on this. But yeah, sorry,
But
continue.
just like from there, I remember like always staying back in school late or just playing around again in the computer lab, and just like having fun designing stuff on PowerPoint. And once I got done with my education after 10th grade, I had to decide what I wanted to do next.
Hmm.
And and working in arts wasn't really an option with the kind of upbringing and family background that I had. Everyone like was either an engineer or a doctor. I come from a typical like good Jew family where they want you to study and like do something academically amazing so that your life is a little bit more safer and set from that perspective. And arts wasn't a safe bet to make. And even just because of how I was conditioned my whole life, I myself thought that arts is not a good option, or a creative career is not a good option at that point. So I chose science, which is the most, which is the opposite of what I should have done. But I chose science, and I did science for 2 years. And after studying science, after finishing my 12th exams, I gave my CET. I did science from KJ Somaya College in Mumbai. All my friends were doing science, so I thought like doing science would be the right choice, because commerce like just
Mm-hmm.
didn't make sense in my head. And I was like, I know math, I can make other subjects work. So that's how I chose science. But after 12th grade, I told my father that I really can't become an engineer, because that was his backup plan for me, to be an engineer, because he's like, anybody can be an engineer and you can have a decent life, and it's a
Mm-hmm.
safe career to have. And that's just what I always heard. My older sister is a dentist, so she chose also science and she became a doctor. But and I told him after 12th grade that I really don't think I can see myself becoming an engineer, and I'll have a really bad life. Even if I become one, I'll be a bad engineer, because I don't understand basic things about like science. I don't understand physics. I don't understand chemistry as much as I thought some of my other friends did. And I really thought that I would barely pass the exams that I gave in 12th grade. So I had to be very
Okay.
honest about how I was feeling, and design wasn't as big a thing as it is now back then. So I remember this was what, in 2012 my father and I started looking up different programs, different graduate programs, undergraduate programs for design and what exists as creative careers. And a lot of the
Okay.
options were in fine arts, right? There was like JJ school in design for Mumbai, because I'm from Mumbai originally, right? So there were a few fine art colleges, and there's Rachna Sansad college, I remember. And there were a few other digital design programs, but they would give you diplomas and not a degree.
Okay.
So that was a big problem for my father, and he wanted me to get a degree, because he
Mm.
said once you get a bachelor's degree, then you can decide if you want to do something further or not, even if you want to go somewhere and learn something further, or a master's, because that was just the mindset that he had. And a degree, just like at that point, gave people surety that you can make something out of your life if you have a degree. So that narrowed us down to just one college in Mumbai, the only one college at that time, which was BD Samani College in Mumbai, that gave a degree in digital design. So my father knew that BD Samani College, and it was a school originally, but they also had a few new programs in design and creative programs, that they undergrad programs that they had taken up. So their fashion program was quite well known, but they had recently started a digital design program. And my father took me there to explore like what the fashion program would look like. And I just
Mm-hmm.
like went through the brochure, and it just didn't feel right. Because I love fashion, and I do appreciate great craft when I see something, but I couldn't envision myself creating those
Doing
pieces,
that.
or like living that life, which I thought was the life that a fashion designer would have to live. And then the next brochure that the principal didn't even try to sell us on, okay, because it was such a brand new that had come up. It was just sitting next
Right.
to him, and I saw that it had like some digital softwares, and I've always been a computer girl, okay. So I saw it had some digital programs on there. It looked like they were playing around with Photoshop, and I'd never touched Photoshop or Illustrator in my life until that point. But it just
Correct.
looked fun. The brochure looked fun, so I just decided to take it up. So graphic design literally happened by chance for me,
By chance.
and I just, yeah, that's how it all
Yeah,
started.
but yeah, but one thing I think is very interesting is that at least like most of the people designers I have talked till now, they found design obviously like by chance, right? That they were doing something else and they started doing something else for something, and then they found, oh, this can become a career, right? What I love in your story is that you went out to look for like courses around these, like the specific style you like, right? A specific skill you like, or something you like to craft. You went after it, and obviously you went to that college, and that's why you found the digital design brochure, correct? So yeah,
Yes.
by chance, but still, effort was there.
Yes, yes, of course. And I do have to give credit to my parents, because once they realized that I can't uh, live as an engineer, they put a lot of effort to find the different options in Mumbai for colleges that were out there, because there were really very few colleges. And we went to even like JJ School of Arts and like,
Hmm.
Rachna Sansad, and their programs were, even their design programs were very like hand, like fine arts type. So you would still have to do everything by hand.
Yeah.
And in your last semester, you then will start doing stuff on the computer. So, for example, if you have to design the layout of a book, rather than using InDesign or even Illustrator or Photoshop, you will have to draw the layouts like
Yes.
completely on paper and pencil.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
so
By the
some,
way,
some
that is still the same. That's still the same. Like if you go to any fine art college right now, they still make you do that.
so that was just that didn't fit right, like in my head, because I've not been a fine arts person my life as well, right? I can enjoy painting and drawing a little bit, but I know that that craft doesn't excite me as much as like playing on the computer and designing, at least initially, right, earlier in my career. So I knew that fine arts is not my thing,
Hmm.
and I can't draw something that I can just do in 5 minutes on the computer. So very early on, I knew that it just didn't fit right. So I guess that college was the only option. Yeah.
No, also, I mean, when people who would be watching, if they are from the recent Gen Zs, they won't know this problem of finding design colleges, right? I think at that time, like I'm the similar time frame at that time. I was also looking for something, not directly, but was just in the market. Either what these fine art colleges, you go to NIFD, NIFT, or these colleges, or you would go to design institutes where you won't get a degree, you'll just get a diploma, right? Animation courses and all that, which obviously
Mm.
wasn't that fun, or I'm not gonna call it skillful, but yeah, that's the honest thing, right? Like they were not very helpful in the whole career thing. So you joined the
Right.
college. How
Right.
like what 4 years, right, for the college?
It was it was a 3 year it was a 3 year bachelor's. It wasn't
Hmm.
4 years, it was 3 years, from 2012 to 15. And quite frankly, it wasn't an amazing program. So it was, I'm glad that I did get a degree at the end of the day, and
Okay.
that degree then helped me, like come for my master's in the US. but
Hmm.
um, but the program was, but it taught me a lot of things in a different way. So while the program was just so new that it wasn't structured in a way where the students could actually learn, there are days where my friends and I would go to college, and the professors would just tell us, "Aaj kuch nahi hai." There's nothing. So we would just sit on the computers, and people would play games and watch movies. And they were definitely getting a large amount from us in terms of
Correct.
admission fee every year, but like there was nothing to do. And I've always been like self
Hmm.
motivated my whole life. So after a couple of months of that, they did teach us like the basic softwares, like they did teach us Adobe Illustrator,
Photoshop
Photoshop.
and all that.
At that time, they even taught us Corel Draw because it was still a thing around that time. And then
I love Corel Draw.
InDesign. So I love that you know these things. But so we learned these softwares, and once I just picked up this skill set,
Hmm.
I start taking up freelance opportunities. I start taking up jobs, and those freelance opportunities paid me nothing. I kid you not. Most of the
Well,
opportunities
you might
probably.
have gotten some exposure, I hope.
So, I mean, at that time, frankly, Rahul, I didn't even understand that if I'm doing something for free, I should ask for exposure or ask for something in return if it's not money, right? I was naive. Everything was new. I had nobody to guide me. My family's not from this background. I mean, I guess that's for most of us, right? So, I really had to figure everything out. And like my school was also not like best at giving
Very
advice. It
helpful.
didn't matter. So I just started taking up different opportunities, and I did so many projects. I was on so many long-term contracts with different clients. I used intern shala. I remember it was a website that my partner had suggested me at that time. He said that why don't you look up for like jobs or internships here, and I went ham on it. I applied for every opportunity out there, and I mean I still do low key, not intern shala, but now I work independently, so I still have to talk to people and reach out for opportunities, and that skill has really helped me along the years. So I reached out to a lot of people. I did a lot of outreach. I got some not amazing projects, but I got work. For not having a portfolio, I got work, right? And
This is you were in college, right?
first year of college, like still
Yeah, I mean,
2012.
yeah, like it's not bad to be honest.
But also like realize that the pool of designers who had that skill set was also relatively smaller at that time,
Yes.
right? So, and I also knew how to sell myself. That also helped a little bit because I
I
could
mean, I
always say
think
that.
that that's a good thing. बोले अगर बोर्ड ना बेचा है, but yeah.
Yeah, I love what you said. And what was I saying? So after I finished a couple of those opportunities and like internships and different projects for a year, then I finally
Mhm.
got uh, a full time kind of opportunity at this startup in Mumbai called Frap, which is now called Footwork. So there, then I had a proper job, which was managing at my own hours. I was still in college. I was still
College.
working. I was still like doing all my projects and all of that. But then late night after I come back home from college, I would for hours and hours and hours I would do their work, and my family and my parents didn't know about any of these hustles that I was doing at all, right? Because in a family setting, especially maybe a Gujarati or Indian family setting, they would want you to focus on your academics a little bit more rather than doing these side projects. And it's not common for a family of doctors and engineers to start working so early while they are in college, right? So they never understood, or I felt like they wouldn't understand, and I just started doing all these projects. But I learned so much on the job, so much. I even learned what I enjoyed and what I didn't enjoy, what parts of being a creative I like, and what were some of my strengths. Like early on I could pick up on it, and that helped me in my college, where my work and my projects were far better than some of my other batchmates, because I was working so much more, right? I was picking up on so many more skill
Yeah,
sets.
life was giving you tuitions, right?
Yes, exactly. So
So,
that, yeah.
yeah, I mean, freelancing is something which like any designer I met, I tell them you start freelancing before even you have a job. That teaches you so much that there are cohorts and courses right of which you can learn product design, visual design, everything. But once you start freelancing, you will learn everything together, and you'll grow as a not just a designer but also as a consultant. You can become an art director in future. You can become an independent designer in future. All that is possible if you just start freelancing and start working in that field though. So first year you did this, you started already doing projects and everything. Which kind of projects you were doing? Like were you doing Photoshop, like posters? What was the work which you were doing also for Frap at that time?
Yeah, it was really a mixture of everything. But most of the work I remember was a lot of social media and branding stuff. So at that time, I didn't even understand what the word branding meant. I knew like what logo design was. I knew what building an identity was a little bit, but I didn't know what branding was really. But at that time, I was working for one client in house. I was working for one brand in house, and everything that I was doing had to be under that visual ecosystem that I had only built. I helped design their identity, their color palette, their all they did a lot of fun social media stuff and a lot of fun campaign ideas that they would want to work on. And I was never given just a brief that Charmie here we need XYZ. Oftentimes what I really loved is if I had an idea for a particular thing that they want to work on, and then I would execute it. So it's that like, and I've always been an ideas person. Like I don't I don't think I'm the best at like executing stuff. Like, there are people that are far better at like some skill sets than like, I have right now. But thinking about some of the storytelling, some ideas, and like making that work has been like really key for my creative journey. Yeah.
Yes, you're already designing social media posters, everything, right? So when did this the like so you use PowerPoint, you started with that. You learned Photoshop and Corel Draw. By the way, Corel Draw I love because I started with print design, and
Ah.
that's the one thing which I enjoy a lot. Then you went to like the social media design, and I'm gonna assume logo design because you were with one brand, so you would have do that for freelancing, right? When did that convert into brand identity and like the work you do right now? At least I think let's start with brand identity, then we can go into motion or type which you work at. Like how did that happen?
Yeah. I so so firstly, after like that, after I finished my bachelor's, I moved
Hmm.
to Bangalore for 2 years to work at an agency in
Oh,
Bangalore. And
nice.
I wanted to kind of step out of my city a little bit and even just grow as an individual while I grow even in my creative career. So I
I mean, you
stepped,
moved from Mumbai to Bangalore,
yeah.
so you got the only thing you got was good weather because traffic and everything is same only in both places. But at least, yeah, it's a good. It's not raining every day, right? So yeah, helpful.
Yeah, but you know what? At that time, and I don't know what the scene is like right now in Bangalore, but at that time, agencies and there were a lot more creative agencies in Bangalore. Their working hours were better in the sense that like you would have to work from Monday to Friday, and you would have most agencies had like Saturday, Sunday off, and they would pay better for that time. So compared to Mumbai agencies is what I'm comparing during my time.
Yeah. No, no, I agree on that part, and I'll add some things for our viewers here that Mumbai is amazing. If you are someone who want to do brand and everything, you learn and walk into that grinding space, right? Because again, the whole media space is there in Mumbai, right? So the whole advertisement space is there. So agencies there are cruel. If you're working in an agency there, if you survive for 2 years, you can survive anywhere in any India or world, right? Mumbai is that cruel. Bangalore, I think at that time was good for agencies, but is more cruel for tech startups. Like
Yes.
the product wise is more. I think here's where Mumbai and Bangalore differentiate. But agency wise, I think Bangalore is still fun. Like they still have the weekends and everything.
Yes, but you're right. Like Bangalore is more tech forward in terms of like their startups and everything. But that also meant that there was more work out there for creative,
Yes.
right? So which allowed me to do even more freelance work in Bangalore than I was doing in Mumbai because there was so much scope and like little projects would always come up alongside like the agency work that I was doing. But like after my experience in Bangalore, I my plan was from because my bachelor's was not as amazing my education, my plan was to always build a portfolio to then eventually move to the US to do my master's. And that had always been my plan, not that I had communicated that with my family but that was always my plan, which is why even in my head I was making decisions of like taking up different projects that I could add to my portfolio, right? Like all my jobs and my internships and my Bangalore projects, like helped me build a really good portfolio for me to apply for New York. And like once I did that, I decided to then finally just like apply for a couple of different programs in New York, and I moved to New York. And my first, so I did my master's in branding from New York. Okay, so that's
Ah,
where,
that's
so
the
that's where the,
structure.
that's where the introduction of branding came in. And again, frankly, if I'm being honest, I applied for that program not knowing exactly what branding was, again, point number one, and not knowing exactly what part of branding the program is going to focus on. Okay, so I thought that the curriculum was great from whatever I understood. Okay, understand that I was still naive and all these things weren't as talked about, like the words wouldn't come up as much, like what branding is or what brand strategy is. Like everything was very new for me, and I didn't have a
There was
circle of
not. Yeah, there's not so much YouTube content around it also, right? Like today.
Exactly, exactly. So, but what I liked before I applied for the program was I saw that they would teach also the business of branding, right? And
Hmm.
that made me feel like I will learn something different apart from my skill set in design that I already have. And additionally, before I applied for the program, I knew that it's not a design program. They're not going to teach me graphic design. They're not going to teach me how to do brand design work. So I knew that I'm going to learn something completely new, and
Hmm.
and while maintaining my learnings from my previous career, my previous like whatever education and like work experience. So the program, like just to tell you, was about brand strategy. The entire program was a master's in brand strategy. It was titled as a master's
Nice
in branding, but the program was a master's in brand
strategy.
strategy, which is what branding is, but like the strategy side of things. So that's how it all like kind of just started. Just went into it
Ma-
without understanding.
Masters are 2 years, right?
So this masters, again, like what I liked about it was that it was a 1 year masters program. I just like fast paced,
Yeah.
and I do like to just push myself to an extent where I might feel like I will die, but then I do come out of it. This is a crazy feeling, but the program was a year, and I felt like I can just get done with my masters quickly and like start working, because my goal was to work, right? Like I didn't want to keep studying. I wanted to work. I wanted to learn on the job, which is what I had done before. So it was a 1 year program. It was a really fast paced program. They had combined 2 years of education into 1 year.
Into 1 year.
So I was practically living in college. I would stay till like 5 a.m. and then like someone would come in and to just like open the door of our like floor where our program is happening, and they would see that I'm there. I'm doing the projects. I'm doing the research. But it was like it was really tiring, but definitely a great learning experience. And my mother always says that when you're pushing yourself too far, you feel that you will feel it's really tough, but you will also have the most amount of learning and growth from those experiences. And it was absolutely true. I learned so much. The projects that I worked on, I still love. The personal projects I worked on as part of the project, like, are some of my favorite projects I've worked on so far. Just the experience was incredible. Yeah. And the connections that I made as well, really helpful. Yeah.
I mean, yeah. Before we get into that sort of more detail into that, right? Would love for you if you can just tell the audience like the difference between brand identity and strategy. Like many people confuses branding with brand strategy, and like
Mm.
confuses just the logo and identity into like, oh, this is branding, right? So would love if you can explain like few points about that and just help out the audience.
Yeah, so strategy is the core of branding, right? For any branding piece. Like, of course, like logo identity design and color palette and typography, all of that is also a part of branding and it's under the same umbrella. But like what ties everything together, what gives your brand purpose is like the brand strategy that you will work
Strategy,
on. And it makes, if you have a strong strategy, then it makes what you're doing kind of bulletproof, future proof, especially.
future proof. Yeah.
So you're not just doing things based on like trends or visual elements that are like out there right now that you're attracted to, or just based on aesthetic reasons. And sometimes that can also be the strategy totally, right? Because that works for a particular market or a launch. But in terms of strategy, everything that you work on will then tie into it. So you will have like a brand positioning, you'll have brand value, and then based on all those, you will then decide what your logo should look like, what your brand naming should be, what your
Should
color
look
palette
like,
would
yeah.
look like, because everything ties back to your strategy. And it's an extremely core part of branding, which should not be ignored. And it makes for really stronger brands. And for what I really feel is that when you have good strategy, and once you sell your client on your strategy, And once you start designing and implementing and executing stuff, once you're in the application phase, your client will never be able to go back on like
Anything,
the
yeah.
whole visual aesthetic and be like, no, this is not what I wanted, we hate what you've designed, because there's always so many layers that like we had to go through, and now they have a checkpoint, right? Because everything has to tie back to the positioning, everything has to tie back to the brand purpose and the big idea of the brand. So once you have that pillar, then it's easier to execute under it and to justify what you've done for your brand and for their business as well.
Agreed. I mean, I got to know that very late in the my design career. Again, thank you, Future, the Chris, the whole channel has just been helpful. But I'm gonna simplify this more for our product designer folks like who are watching this. So in product design, we have design sprints, right? Every week you choose a problem, like you get a problem statement, and for the whole week you work on that problem with steps, right? The first few day, 1 day is for ideation, the second day is execution, the testing, and then again the process changes based on how big the product is, does it need a week or not. So that's the thing. But in that in design sprints, just I'm talking to the audience now. Design sprints, you have these goals. Okay, I want to solve this problem. In brand strategy, you have this goal. Okay, I want to reach this much market, maybe. That's it. Goal can be very different. It can be very different for everyone. Someone can, okay, we want to get this much audience, we want to build this many stores, we want to do make this big of a distribution, or maybe it can be money, it can be audience, it can be multiple things. Based on that goal, you start going reverse engineer the whole thing. How will you reach right now where you are to that goal? That's the whole strategy part of it, and now everything around ties into that process. So like if your client say, oh, we don't like this color, you say, you know what, you wanted more audience, right? So uh, based on data, this color has more viewership cause people get attention like this faster. That's why using this color. Your client just can't say, you know what, use purple because I like it. So this is why strategy also helps. I mean, as designers also, but in the long run, it tells the company like the decisions it needs to make, right? And many people have this misunderstanding that branding is just the visual part of thing, right? Like, okay, we did the strategy and we just got out and it's done. But it also helps CEOs, founders run the company.
Yep.
Like, cause when we work on the values, for example, you would know, right, Jami? When we work on the values, it tells how the communication in company is gonna happen, not only outside but also in house, right? How does the HR talk to the employees? Also, we decide that in brand strategy when we are doing that, and yeah, I mean, it's a very like I. That's why also I'm very afraid of doing strategy, because this is like a big responsibility.
I,
Like, but
I think I loved hearing that because a lot of them, a lot of your steps are definitely steps that we follow in brand strategy as well. And I do feel strategy can be overwhelming. To be honest, even after finishing my master's in branding, I still felt strategy was overwhelming. Okay. So for a little bit of time, I just, after I learned everything, because there was so much information, I took a little bit more time to just refer YouTube videos and online, and what are the simple steps people take to follow a structure in strategy. And like at the end of the day, branding is just deliberate differentiation. Debbie Millman says this. So you are just learning how to, you're just finding a way to differentiate your brand in a deliberate way, okay, by using strategy, because then there is a purpose for everything, then there's a reasoning for everything, and that just helps the brand. But we can talk about how we can simplify strategy for people who are new and getting out there as well on another call, because that could be an interesting conversation.
yeah, that's definitely I think I have to make some branding content. Like I want to make it from a long time. Definitely some help would be really like nice. So definitely we'll talk about that in later. So yeah, you did your masters. You started then you started a job, or did you start doing freelancing after masters?
I immediately started working at a branding agency in New York called Jones Knowles Ritchie. So they're a really well known branding agency, and and again I feel like I wasn't specifically looking for branding work, but
Mm-hmm.
I was applying for opportunities at agencies. I knew I wanted to be at agencies because you hear that you grow the most, and like you work on a lot of projects, and I thought that was the right thing to do. But I wanted to apply at agencies or companies whose work I really liked, right? Rather than again just like finding a job at any agency. And it is
Agency,
it
yeah.
is super difficult, and I know the job market is really tough as well right now for a lot of creators who I am speaking to, even in New York. But I just thought like JKR's work, Jones Knowles Ritchie's work was really amazing, and their style and energy just reflected the exact way that I think, and it just connected immediately because, and a professor from JKR used to teach at the
Hmm.
branding program. Okay, so I found out about Jones Knowles Ritchie through the program. I didn't even know about the agency before that because I'm not from New York, right? I'm from Mumbai, and I just come there. So I loved their work. I loved how they designed stuff, how they thought through things, the energy in their work just really spoke to me. How even the professor presented his work, that style of presenting, the pace and everything just reflected exactly how I presented my work, even in college. So there were a lot of similarities which made me feel safe about like even applying there. And then I just applied for a job. I applied like very regularly. I didn't go through my professor because because I just thought that the professor was really busy and I should not bother the professor. It was so silly. Ideally, you should be asking your professors for help. But I just applied for it, and luckily, a senior designer loved my work, so she called me for an interview at that time, and things moved really quickly from there. So while I was there, we worked on some major rebranding projects, like the rebranding project of Burger King, the rebranding of Bud Light, launch of Bud Light Seltzer, Jetpuffed, Oreo. So a lot of CPG beverage heavy work. Uh,
Burger King, the elitist design, which
yeah,
yeah. So talk of the town, by the way, when that launched, right? Like people love that. Generally, rebrands. I mean, that's a universal law that people hate rebrands. Whenever you do a rebrand, they're gonna be a chunk of design and say this is bad. Let's go back to the because again, we like everyone hates change. But Burger King, I saw there was this one brand where people were like, "Yo, this looks nice. This feel more like the Burger King vibe." So great work
exactly.
there,
It felt more Burger King than the original Burger King itself,
Burger King.
right? Because we weren't starting from like super scratch either, right? That's where the strategy came in, and the business really need a refresh because the way their restaurants and like branding like was coming across felt like more of a cheap fast food restaurant, right? And the brand want to elevate itself and expand in a different way, even expand the audience that it was targeting in so many ways. So it was a major rebranding that took a whole year to work on.
But it worked as I mean, I knew Burger King before cause again the same reason for a cheaper fast food alternative, right? That you get a burger for this much price easily instead of going to a McDonald's, right? But their online brand was very different because
Yes.
online they were getting into like messing with McDonald's, going back and forth. It
Yes.
was more fun. But when you
Exactly.
go to real life, like their stores, it was very different than that, right? So I
Yeah.
think after this, now it feels more cohesive. The
Yeah.
brand's tone in there, or your actual like I think they still had that king crown, if I'm not wrong, before
Yeah.
also.
Yeah.
But now it just became like people go to working just to get that crown, so that they'll get it and then come back home and use it. But yeah, you also work with Budweiser, Bud Light.
I worked with a couple of Anheuser-Busch like AB InBev brands, so Bud Light, Budweiser, even Mike Hard Lemonade. Mike's Hard Lemonade in some countries falls under that, I think, and just a couple of other like beverage clients for Anheuser-Busch. So, but Bud Light was the rebranding of Bud Light was another major project that I worked on for them, and the branding of Bud Light Seltzer, which was a crazy launch for AB InBev, especially because they have always focused on like beer and hard drinks. But a couple of years ago, they realized with the launch of White Claw they realized that they White Claw really entered. Have you heard about White Claw? Are you familiar with White Claw? White
I've
Claw is a
not.
seltzer brand, and so like flavored seltzer that has a small percentage of alcohol.
Charmie just reminding me I live in Gujarat, so the drink's name doesn't have like any connections for me. But
No, no, no. So it was a big cultural thing. I understand what you're saying, so I'm sorry.
thank you for reminding me. You know what? I can't even drink my sorrows. Sorry, yeah.
but but you will like this. So because they realized that they had to move away from hard drinks, at least a little bit, or like create a launch a new brand that's not focused on like hard beer or whatever, because the culture is now moving towards more healthier, low calorie, easy to drink beverages. So when the generation now is going out, they're not gravitating towards like having beers or like hard drinks. They're actually gravitating towards seltzers, so like light beverages that are just like that, just have a hint of flavor, that are carbonated.
Hmm.
So because people are more health conscious now, people do like to take care of themselves. They don't like to. So the culture has changed, right? And brands need to evolve, right?
Evolve.
Brands
Yeah.
need to be like chameleons. They need to evolve like with like different cultures and like need like of businesses and times. They need to adapt. So they want to launch this new product called Bud Light Seltzer into the market as a direct competitor to the king of seltzer, White Claw,
White Claw.
which had broken the market in the US. I am not kidding. It just like it had gone viral. It still like is doing really well, I feel. But I'm not really a seltzer drinker either, but but I designed the product. And they wanted to launch like, but because Bud Light has a lot of equity, it has obviously money, it can build stuff very quickly. So that's where this launch came in, and we designed the entire branding in what, 2 to 3 weeks. It was a crazy
That's
fast
quick
launch.
for yeah. That's really quick for a huge
It was a
brand,
crazy
right?
fast launch. Yeah, yeah. It was. We did most of the important work very quickly, and because the brand wanted to immediately uh, build the stuff, print it out, and test it out in the market. So they
Hmm.
had their flavors already ready. The few flavors that they want to launch with initially, and we designed like the logo and the brand identity, like color palette type, maintaining the equity that Bud Light already has, and Bud Light is a very known brand. So you
Yeah.
cannot completely move away from a brand that has so much equity, because that equity builds like awareness and presence in the eyes of other people that are looking at a new product. So when they see Bud Light, they know that, oh, it's a known brand, even if it
It's a
looks
familiar,
different.
yeah, it's a familiar brand, so they can always try
Familiar
it out.
brand. So, but we didn't want it to look like beer. We wanted it to look like seltzer. So we made sure we were using like a lighter color palette that felt fresher, more bold, but also like using a lot of white, because that was the seltzer color palette at that time. Like for seltzer, everyone was using white
Right.
or like silver, because it was all about light carbonated drinks with a hint of flavor and like a hint of alcohol. So like a hint of color was added, but mostly like white and silver, and then using the logo and like how you use the other assets. So it was a crazy, yeah, it was a crazy sprint.
You also worked on Google's I/O event.
Yeah.
They saw in your portfolio. I think that's some more interesting. Like beverage again, I like whenever I can get them, but I think Google I'll be more interested in. What was that project like?
So the projects that I spoke about before were at agencies, right? I
Correct.
worked with them at Jones Knowles Ritchie. But then after a few years, I started working independently. So I stopped working full time, and I started like working as a freelancer and taking up projects with different clients. And that's when like the Google project came up, where a designer at Google internally
Hmm.
loved my work and my style of work, and they wanted to
Okay.
bring me on for as like a core creative for the IO 2022 project. And so she brought me on, and we spoke, and they loved my style, because of course when you're a freelancer, when they see your portfolio, if they see it's a good fit, then it just works. And my color palette and my style is also like playful and vibrant, and Google's a lot of that as well.
Yeah.
When it's not its core branding, Google's also extremely playful. So and I was really interested in IO, because it's not, because I'm not designing for core Google products, which allows for a lot of room to play around with stuff, right?
Yeah.
And it's this is an event. So in an event, you're designing everything. You're designing the brand identity, logo, and
The
everything. But then
prints,
you're
billboards,
everything digital
marketing
print.
assets, everything.
Exactly, like stuff for YouTube and even thumbnails, and then also designing the entire event space, also designing keynote graphics for Sundar Pichai, right? Like, so it's everything. It's a mixture of everything, and we were a core group that were leading the entire project. So we were
Hmm.
also working with, and now at this point, I already had a few years of work experience, so
Correct. Yeah.
I was in a more senior role.
Correct.
And then you were also leading other external agencies to build a lot of stuff for this event, because the event is massive, so there were so many different parts in the project. We also worked with and Walsh, which is another agency for the branding of for a chunk of the branding of the project, and that was also really fun. But like, yeah, so every year Google has a new theme for these events,
Correct.
and based on the new theme, like, we design the new branding for the entire event, and that's where everything
So,
comes in.
how many years? Like, you have done one event, if I'm not wrong. Like, how many? Like, you still work with them for every year?
So after IO, I worked on another project with them called Search On 2022. So IO is like the biggest event Google has of the year.
Yeah. Right.
And then Search On is like another baby event. It's still major, it's quite major. But Search On is then a part of Search On is a search specific event, a Google search specific event. So they will talk about a lot of like Google search things and what are the new tech things that they've come up with, how to make search easier and more accessible. So that's also an event that they host every year. And it happens immediately after IO. The work for that kicks off immediately after. So
Fantastic.
I nearly worked with Google for a year, like on the two projects combined.
Yeah.
And then IO also, because I had experience working with IO, like my work with Search On was pretty like working with them was very seamless, because I already knew like what working with the team is like, what is the scope of work, what's expected out of me, how I need to work with agencies. So it was very easy, and I frankly fell in love working with events while I did that. Uh,
Event design. I mean, any designer who's like into branding and want to try do make event design, like work on that once. I mean, as you said, right, Charming, like the if you're someone who who's love to freelance, right, who's outgoing and everything, you love events. Because one day you are designing a keynote for as a session the picture, right, and other day you are in a print shop helping out a hoarding which is like messing up, or the billboard which is not printed right, the colors are not coming out. You understand how CMYK work, you get into Pantone shades. Another day you are using Illustrator or InDesign to create some assets for there. It's I think that's the someone of people and ask, right, where can start designing. If I can, I will tell them, try printing. If you want to get into branding, try printing first. You'll get to the hard work first, and then the easier work comes of identity work. But yeah,
Mhm.
but red design is just, I mean, it's different. So currently, what are you doing right now? I mean, what's happening right now?
So right now right after those two projects with Google, I worked on an event with Dropbox. There was another event after that. So I worked on an event with Dropbox, which was an internal event that Dropbox, which was the first time they were hosting an event like that. So first of its kind, an internal event for creatives at Dropbox to kind of just
Hmm.
meet with each other, collaborate, learn how to connect, learn a little bit more about design. So it was a proper event, but it was for the creatives at Dropbox, because there were a lot of hires during remote work, who started with remote work, so people didn't really connect with each other in person. So that event happened immediately after I finished the Google project, And because I was in love with events, I was excited to take that one on as well.
Yeah.
And that event was really, really successful, and it was a great collaboration between the between Sally, like another an amazing Dropbox employee who I was working with, and because that event was really successful, they wanted me on again this year as well. So I'm currently working on the same event, but for this year with them.
This year.
So it has a new like branding and like all of that, as a new style. And
New theme, new name, and yeah, I get it.
exactly, yeah. But it's really fun, and I love working with the team at Dropbox as well. Really, really warm and fun. And when you find good team players, the work is just next level, right? You have so much trust on each other. You rely on each other, and it's with Dropbox. It's a really, really small team. It's practically just me and like that the internal employee who's the chief growth officer at Dropbox. So she's not even a creative director or like creative,
Into
but she
this field, yeah.
has a creative eye. She's the one handling the entire event, and we are working with a production agency to help produce the stuff. But then it's just me. So I am really the creative director. I'm also the designer. I'm the art director. I'm everything. But it's a project that I genuinely love. So I love working on it each year, and yeah, excited to like when the event happens. It'll happen in Feb, end of Feb. So share the work that we did. Yeah.
Then that makes, I mean, excited to see the work. I think we'll be able to follow up whenever the work comes. But yeah, I think it's an interesting story. At least I think what I like specifically about the whole story is that you knew what you wanted at least from the start. Many of the people miss that part, right? Like that, okay, we have this skill, we like to do this, why not pursue a career in that? So that is a good advantage, I think, for you.
I think I think more than me knowing what I wanted, which I still don't feel like I know sometimes if I'm being honest, I feel like I knew what I didn't want, right? So that was a very, and I can look at it in hindsight and say that, yeah, that has been something that I have always been like, and I've always, like, known what I don't want. Even when I go out shopping or I'm choosing what I want to do next in my life, more than knowing what I want, I.
Not
I
doing.
know internally what I don't enjoy, or like, for example, a style that I don't like, or whatever. So I know what I don't like, and I listen to that voice very deeply, and that helps me kind of just narrow down the pool of what I will like then, because there's a lot that I will not like.
I mean, in the end, you get a result. Like you at least either you choose by like getting on the what you like or what you don't like, removing those factors. But yeah, in the end, you get a result. That makes sense. Uh, Kuchami, I think we have took a lot of time of yours. This thank you for telling the story. And before you close, is there any advice you want to give to our audience?
I think I would just say that just feel free to experiment and be bold. Don't feel like you need to be stuck with like a title. Like choose task over title as a creative. Like focus on that. And it's something that I have also learned along the way in my own journey. But don't focus on, for example, becoming a creative director or an art director or a production designer, whatever, right? Like if you like a skill set or a task of a particular role, focus on the task and don't focus on the title as much. The creative industry is growing so fast, the titles are changing. And
Changing.
if you are even interested in, for example, becoming a creative director, more than thinking about a lifestyle that a creative director might have, think about what are the tasks that the creative director would be doing every day, right? And if those tasks you will enjoy working on or not, because oftentimes these titles sound glamorous, but the work is not as glamorous as it might seem. And yeah,
I mean,
that's,
yeah,
I guess
brand
that's it.
strategist sounds very glamorous, but when you get to the work, it's painful. I mean, for me at least.
Yeah.
Well,
I just to I know we're trying to end this, but there's a
no, no, no.
theory
Take your time.
there's a
Yeah.
theory that I heard from there's a theory that I recently came across called pixel theory,
Hmm.
where this guy is talking about the fact that we usually think that life is a picture, a beautiful picture, right?
I
uh,
remember that here.
but
Yes,
but we actually only live in an individual pixel of the
pixel.
picture every day. So rather than focusing on like always the bigger picture, or that I want to buy this house eventually, or a car, or like what kind of life will I live, focus on making each day like beautiful, because happiness only comes from living those everyday, living every day like in those individual pixels, like overall. So that's where most happiness really comes from. And if you make each day count, like in hindsight you'll be able to calculate like what your bigger picture looks like as well.
No, this makes sense. I think, yeah, I mean, this I also have to rethink a lot. I mean, again, is that like I love to do things when they are happening, go with the flow and experiment and everything. But this pixel theory, I have to read more about that. I think I've heard this, but gotta read more. But thank you, Charmy. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you so much for sharing your story with us. And hopefully, anyone who wants to get in the same college, right, now they know which college to go in Mumbai if they want to do this, and at least have an idea of where they want to learn and everything. And
I
so I'm
don't
gonna
think
link.
I don't think the college exists anymore.
Yeah, so you're like, oh, we have produced these mini imaging designers. You're gonna close and not that doesn't anymore break the mold. But yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for coming, and thank you.
Thank you for having me, Rahul.